Hello, I'm Locke Meredith. I'd like to invite you to join me on the next Legal Lines, where my guest is Louisiana State Senator Elbert Guillory. Senator Guillory is running for Lieutenant Governor, and he's going to tell us why. He's going to talk about his vast career working in the private world and also in the public world for governors and such in the northern states, and as a legislator here in the state of Louisiana. He doesn't want to be just a salesman for Louisiana, but he wants to be an integral part of moving Louisiana forward. So join us on the next Legal Lines with State Senator Elbert Guillory.
It's time now for Legal Lines Tips with your host, Locke Meredith.
Hello, I'm Locke Meredith with a Legal Lines tip for you. If you have to hire a lawyer, and I hope you don't, but if you do, hire a lawyer that you like, that you trust, and who specializes in your area of need. In these days, with all the laws we have, lawyers for the most part now specialize. They specialize in contracts, defense, business, personal injury, all kinds of areas of the law. So when you interview with a lawyer, ask him, does he specialize in the area of your need? Has he tried the cases? Has he been successful? And of course, how does he charge you? Is his fee hourly? Is it a percentage of the case if he recovers? What exactly does he charge? So my Legal Lines tip from me, Locke Meredith, to you is, if you have to hire a lawyer, hire one you like, you trust, and who specializes in your area of need.
This has been Legal Lines Tips with your host, Locke Meredith.
Welcome to Legal Lines. I'm Locke Meredith, and I'm very pleased to have back on the show Louisiana Senator Elbert Guillory. Senator, it's great to see you again.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you so much for coming back in, and let's kind of just talk about what you've been through. You've been on a roller coaster ride here with our United States Senator-elect Bill Cassidy. Tell the folks about that.
I've spent a lot of time crisscrossing Louisiana, sometimes with and sometimes for Senator Cassidy.
And I notice I would see announcements occasionally in the media and elsewhere, and you were basically, from what I understand, kind of targeting the black community, but also all Louisianans by communicating the need for basically the vision for the country and the state that Senator Cassidy has. He was a U.S. Congressman for several years and has now been elected. So what did you learn?
I talked with a lot of people across the state, and their issues are jobs, education, safety. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people are very concerned about the way that we have gotten away from those basic ethics that made America great. Hard work, industriousness, self-reliance, those kinds of things.
Well, and
family.
It's interesting. You know, you apparently were very good at what you were communicating, and that you taped a good number of YouTube videos, and I guess they were used elsewhere, but that's where I viewed a good number of them. But you were taking on United States senators, and not just Senator Mary Landrieu here in Louisiana, but in Arkansas and in Georgia and elsewhere. Tell the folks about that, because I think you were successful in every one of them.
Yes. We worked in 5 states. We were on the air, the television airwaves.
Okay,
in
so
5
not just
states.
YouTube.
Not just YouTube,
okay.
But we were on television. And you put your finger on it accurately, the 2 messages. One to the community at large, that we need to do better. We've got to stop spending the way that we're spending. We have to be more selective in our foreign policies, all of those kinds of things. Returning to an earlier, stronger, closer America. And my message to the black community, which is we can't succeed if we put all of our eggs in one basket.
And I think one of the lines in it was that 95 out of 100 black individuals are voting Democrat this day.
That is correct.
And from our previous conversation, that hadn't worked real well in your view, even though you were on the front lines of that in the beginning. Is that right?
Yes, that is correct.
So tell the folks, well, first of all, your YouTube channel has, I think, 1.2 to 1.3 million views. You have over 5,500 followers. So you have quite an audience. What is the number one message that you're trying to communicate to folks?
The number one message to my brothers and sisters in the American community is that we have to make some changes. We cannot continue down the road that we are on right now. It's spending, for example, $18 trillion in debt.
Unbelievable.
We are a bankrupt nation right now, and if the government fails, the first people who will be affected, the people who will be most affected, are poor people.
That's right. That's right. And it's interesting too, Senator, because, you know, a decade ago, the Republicans were in power. And at one point they had the House, they had the Senate, and they had the presidency. Then people got so irritated with their running of the country that they started bringing in Democrats. And then the Democrats had total control of the House, the Senate, and the presidency. And now we're moving back. The pendulum is swinging back to the Republicans again. What is that telling us?
That Americans are really searching for the right answers.
For real leaders.
President Bush, unfortunately, started this wild spending spree. President Obama doubled down and tripled down on that same wild spending spree that has us in such difficulty.
So in a lot of ways, both parties, I kind of describe it as, you know, the Democrats, at least in my view, are heading towards the cliff and they're going about 120 miles per hour. The Republicans are still heading towards the cliff. They might be going 70 miles per hour, though I think they're speeding up too in some ways. Is that accurate?
I think that that's accurate. There are some new people, and Senator Cassidy is one of those, who really understand that there's a cliff and that we can go over that cliff and we need to put the brakes on and turn the bus around. Being a godless country has hurt us. Taking God out of schools, taking prayer out of schools, taking the Ten Commandments out of courthouses and that sort of thing has hurt this nation. This is not the first nation to turn its back on God. And that has never worked well for any nation.
Now, I have heard, and of course you've made a formal announcement that you are running for Lieutenant Governor of the great state of Louisiana. Tell folks why you decided to do that.
In talking with people about the needs of Louisiana, the need for more safety, the need for better schools, the need for more jobs, my background, almost 50 years in law, government, and politics, in about 8 or 9 states and a bunch of cities, has given me a greater depth and breadth of experience than just about anybody else in the state.
Well, tell folks, let's summarize. Your accomplishments are many and very far wide ranging. Tell the folks a little bit about yourself. I mean, I love the story about where you grew up and how you grew up.
Cornfields of Lawtell is where I started my employment life when I was about 5 years old. By the time I was 8, I was cutting grass for people in Opelousas. Lifeguard at 15, first arrest at 15.
Attended Southern University, I believe, for a brief period?
Yes.
And tell them about why it was so brief.
I went to Southern when I was 16. At 17, I became the editor-in-chief of the Southern University newspaper. And at 18, because of the things that I wrote in that newspaper, I was expelled, escorted off campus at gunpoint, actually. And as a result, though, you not only continued your education, but you joined the military, the Navy. Yes. Finished college while I was in the Navy, stationed in Virginia, accepted at some of the better law schools in this country. I went to Rutgers and taught at Rutgers for a year after I graduated, and then worked in government in Pennsylvania and Maryland and New Jersey and Illinois and Seattle and.
Well, and you're leaving out another, I think, very appropriate level of education, and that was in New York. You studied at seminary.
Yes, I went to New York Theological Seminary and prepared myself for a greater way of serving my Lord.
And I don't know if it's private, but you formally became ordained, what, this year you said?
Yes, in November of 2014, I became an ordained minister.
That's wonderful. Briefly tell the folks the type of jobs you had, because the jobs that you had in the states up north, and of course here too, were leadership positions. You were taking control of folks.
I ran state agencies.
All right, well, we'll continue this on the next segment. This is Legal Lines with Locke, Meredith. Our Louisiana Senator Elbert Guillory will be right back. Hello, I'm Locke Meredith, and I'd like to invite you to join me on the next Legal Lines, where we're going to talk about you and the law. You know, a law is nothing but an exercise of power over you, people, places, or things. But where does that power come from? Where does the government get that power? And how is that power exercised? And do you play a role at all? That's what you need to know. So join us on the next Legal Lines, where knowledge is power. Welcome back to Legal Lines. I'm Locke Meredith. Again, very pleased to have back on the show Louisiana Senator Elbert Guillory. Senator, let's dive right back in. You were kind of going through your background, summarizing your education, your kind of work experience. Tell the folks about the positions that you held in the cities up north and also here that are kind of CEO type positions in a lot of ways.
I managed state agencies, a division of a state agency in Pennsylvania, and then from then on I managed state agencies or city agencies, for example in Seattle, on the cabinet of the mayor or the governor of the various states. And
so, I think I read that you were doing that in your 20s?
I ran my first agency when I was 29.
Remarkable. And so you've had experience over a long period of time of managing money and people and responsibilities.
That is correct. Mostly enforcing civil rights laws during those early years. And that was an awesome responsibility at an interesting time in American history.
Well, and let's talk about that, because you were, we mentioned it earlier, you were on the forefront of the civil rights movement in the late 50s, 60s. Explain to folks how you were involved in that.
It started when I was 15 and couldn't check books out of the public library. I liked to read, and during the summers, the only time I could check out books from the library would be from my school library. So during the summers, I couldn't have access to books unless I had already stashed a bunch of books for the summer. So I went to check out a book, and I knew that that was not going to work out well, and it did not work out well. It worked out as the Lord wanted it to work out. I was escorted out of that place by the police officers.
Amazing. Boy, have times changed, huh?
Yes, but it was good. It was my introduction to civil rights demonstrations. And over the years, I had participated in many. Scars still on my body from there's a dog bite scar that's quite an interesting reminder of speed. After that bite, I never ran that slowly again in my life.
I understand that. Explain also that in your practice, because you practice law privately, explain to the folks the type of law that you practice.
Constitutional and criminal law mostly. In Opelousas, being a general practitioner, I've handled divorces and all those other things, but over the years, primarily constitutional law and criminal law.
Well, then you're very familiar with the fact that we have such an interesting time in our history where the Constitution seems to be being minimized or even perhaps ignored by the federal government. Particularly in this case, I'm thinking of the President Obama, and I recall seeing in a video where you actually were talking about that. Explain to the folks what's going on.
We are primarily, I believe, a nation of God, and secondarily, a nation of laws. We put laws into effect so that when government changes human beings, there'd still be that continuity over hundreds of years. This group of people in Washington have very little respect or understanding for American culture and the need for continuity in a nation. So instead of being a nation of laws, they want to become a nation of men. And I'm just going to do it my way, says your president. And so he goes it alone and just with a stroke of a pen attempts to choose which laws will not be enforced or to impose other laws, edicts on America that are not constitutional and not legal. They're outside of the setup, the framework that the founding fathers gave to us.
Well, and let's explain the framework, because the bottom line is when our nation was formed, the founders did not trust centralized government. In that day and age, it was a king. And so they chopped up power between the president, the Senate, and the House, and the judiciary.
Exactly right.
And so there was distrust of any one person or a small group of people having total power, and yet that seems to be what we're moving more closely to these days.
Unfortunately, that is the case. In immigration, for example, all of the immigration edicts of this president have either been choosing not to enforce certain laws
that are already on the books, passed by Congress, signed by another president,
and verified by judges. So all of the parts of our system have validated those laws, and he alone has chosen that we're just not going to enforce these laws. And he has said, I'm going to create new law, and he has given pardons to, amnesty to 5 million, actually it's closer to 11 million people who have been formally referred to as illegal immigrants.
And I saw a video also, presentation, where you talked about the impact that was having on those who are most poor in destitute circumstances. Explain what you meant.
Perfect example. He imposed on the state of Louisiana 1,500 primarily 14 to 18-year-olds from South America.
These kids that are coming in across the border.
Exactly.
Saying, y'all going to school in Louisiana.
Going to Louisiana.
Drop off 1,500 folks here.
That's right.
Kids.
In the first 2 months, we spent $10 million from the poorest schools, the most underfunded schools.
Because that's where they live?
Of course. Of course. Heavily in the New Orleans area, the Baton Rouge area, the Lafayette area. Those schools, $10 million. In those first 2 months, $1.15 million treating the diseases and illnesses that they brought into our hospitals and into our communities.
And we're the ones paying for it
Yes.
via taxes, and the communities that can least sustain that type of blow are the ones that are being asked to deal with it.
Yes, they didn't go into Mary Landrieu's neighborhood or to Obama's neighborhood. They came into my neighborhood. And my neighborhood is the place that has the worst schools and the worst health care. And we have had to, they didn't send us any money when they sent us those 1,500 young people. They didn't send a penny. We had to, Louisiana taxpayers and those of us who are funded by those revenue streams, we're the ones who had to suck it up.
And not only am I seeing the federal government kind of ignore the needs of the people or fully vet the consequences of their decisions, but they're also seeming to exert and try and take over more of the powers that were reserved to the states. We have 50 states. The Constitution gave those states powers. What they didn't give to the federal government, the Constitution says either the people or the states retain all that power. And yet the federal government is saying, no, we're going to tell you states what to do. An example I saw you talking about was the EPA, new rules and regulations.
Yes. The EPA is trying to drive the coal industry out of America. And the coal of today is not the coal of yesterday. We're not talking about a lot of smoke and all of that. This is some fairly good burning coal.
And so now they're mandating rules and regulations we have to comply with.
That's correct.
All right, we'll continue this on the last segment. This is Locke with Legal Lines. My guest, very special guest, Louisiana Senator Elbert Guillory. We'll be right back. Hello, I'm Locke Meredith, and I'd like to invite you to join me on the next Legal Lines, where we're going to talk about the law and you and why it should matter to you what a law is. You know, in America, in our cities, in our states, in our federal governments, they all pass thousands, hundreds of thousands of laws, regulations every single year, and they either directly or indirectly affect you. That's why you need to know what a law is. It's an exercise of power over people, places, and things. So join us on the next Legal Lines, where knowledge is power. Welcome back to Legal Lines again. I'm Locke Meredith, and very pleased to have back on the show Louisiana Senator Elbert Guillory. Senator, you're running for Lieutenant Governor.
Yes.
And as I have heard it expressed, there's two primary duties that the Lieutenant Governor has, but I may be wrong. One is, which obviously is extraordinarily important, you step in for the governor if he's incapacitated or dies.
Or leaves the state.
Or leaves the state. Okay, I did not know that.
Yes.
The second would be the lieutenant governor operates the Department of Tourism for the state. Is that correct?
That is correct.
What are the other duties and responsibilities of the lieutenant governor?
Well, the primary responsibility, being one heartbeat away from the governor's chair, having to take over when the governor leaves the state or becomes incapacitated, means that the lieutenant governor should have major responsibilities for setting policy and implementing those policies, for managing Louisiana. I would expect to be an integral part of the governor's team, working with the legislature, and that will be easy because I've spent the last decade in the state legislature, both the House and the Senate.
That's right.
So I know the players. We are friends. We work well together on both sides. So I would expect to be an integral part of that team.
Now, is that totally up to the governor as to whether or not you play that type of role, or is it legislatively mandated?
It is, in general terms, mandated by the Constitution, but in the details of it, governors have
a lot of
implemented
control.
it a little differently. I've spoken with all of the major candidates for governor so that we would, as we start off, understand how I expect to operate the lieutenant governor's office, and I've reached an agreement with each of those major candidates that should I be successful, I will be able to fulfill those duties.
That's excellent. And I know
I would love to be the tourism director too. I mean, that's going to be a lot of fun, but that's just that's icing on a very good cake.
And I know that you traveled with our United States Senator David Vitter while Senator-elect Bill Cassidy was traveling all over the state. And I assume you have a good relationship with him because, as I understand it, he's the #1 top contender for being governor.
Yes, I have a very good relationship with him, with each of the major candidates.
Which would be the other major candidate being our current Lieutenant Governor, Jay Darden.
Jay Darden, yes.
Excellent, excellent. Well, that's a nice place to be in.
And Scott Angel, the Cajun Flash.
Well, good. All right. So,
and speaking of the Cajun Flash, I must tell you that this face is the face of Louisiana. Nowhere else on earth can you find a face that is part Cherokee, part Cajun, and part African.
I didn't know you
I am
had
the
Indian.
Louisiana gumbo.
Wow, that's wonderful. Well, you're right. You represent what Louisiana is, a melting pot. Well, let's talk about the fact that there was a video that was seen, a YouTube video that was seen by well over a million, when you switched from being a Democrat to a Republican. But I bet most folks don't know that you'd actually been a conservative/Republican your whole life. Explain that, because I'm not sure folks really know what's going on.
I was brought up in a community and in 2 churches by 2 parents who were basic Americans. And those are my values. The basic values of America are what I am, how I cut my teeth. It's what I learned as a child and as a young man in that community and in that home or those homes. Being a Republican or a Democrat has never been that important to me. Being true to those values and to my God and to my country. I'm pro-gun, pro-God, pro-life, very pro-country. So the military, for example, we've not missed a war. We've served whenever this country has needed to be served.
Your family?
Absolutely. World War I, World War II, Korea,
And
Vietnam.
you were Vietnam.
Absolutely. I'm the Vietnam guy.
Right.
My son, Army sniper.
Is that right?
Oh yes. We haven't missed.
Thank you all for your service,
Thank you.
and please express our appreciation to your son. Let's talk about the fact that if you're elected Lieutenant Governor, having had the conversations with the top candidates for governor, what are the top issues that you have learned are of the greatest concern to the Louisiana citizens?
Jobs. We have to continue our job creation and economic development.
How do we do that?
We've done a good job. We've moved from 42nd in the United States to 5th in job creation.
The governor has brought in with the legislature billions of dollars of investment
we
for
must
decades.
continue that. That's correct. We have to continue it. Second, we must make sure that with all these new jobs and the new technologies, we have to have a populace ready for those jobs.
Meaning
So
educated,
yes,
trained.
trained. Our high schools, junior high schools, really, we should start junior high, our trade schools and junior colleges, and our universities, all must collaborate to ensure that our population is well trained and prepared for those jobs.
Well,
so education is crucial.
Well, and I notice you've been part of this legislature that has brought in the voucher schools and the charter schools, and as I understand it, you're against this Common Core stuff. Is that right?
Yes, I am.
Explain to the folks, please,
Well,
sir.
When I graduated more than 50 years ago, our scores are higher then than the scores of the graduating class in Opelousas today.
So the education 50 years ago was superior to the education the kids are getting today.
Correct. What we did, and this was a poor, underfunded, black, segregated school, but we produced top quality students. We were able to educate students even under those circumstances. Now that we're not living under those Jim Crow circumstances, our education system should be far, far superior. We've gone backward, and part of the reason we've gone backward is because of federal intervention into the classroom. Teachers don't have control of the classes. There are children who are disruptive and violent in the classrooms, and can stay there.
And disrupt the learning capabilities of all the other students.
That's correct. So we have to go back to some things. There were 2 people in my graduating class who would be called special today. They didn't receive any special considerations. They had to play by the same rules. They had to have the same discipline, the same education as everyone else. They are both retired. They succeeded well. They sent their children to college. They own homes. They own cars. They're fine citizens.
So you're against Common Core because it's basically the federal government telling states and the local schools how they have to, their curriculum and how they have to teach? Is that the general
correct.
nature of the complaint?
That's the general nature of the complaint.
And so it's taking the families and the local communities out of the education process.
Yes.
One size fits all.
And imposing Washington, D.C. values into Louisiana schools. And our values are different.
So you'll tackle education, jobs, and then support the family.
Support the family. And safety. There's too much danger. We have to stop the culture of violence that is disrupting our homes.
Excellent, excellent. Senator Guillory, it's been a pleasure to have you on the show, and look forward to having another show with you. This is Locke, Meredith Legal Lines, our Louisiana State Senator Elbert Guillory. Thank you for being with us.